All right, let's dive right into this explainer. When a patient goes into surgery, they're incredibly vulnerable. But there's this massive, meticulously engineered system working entirely behind the scenes to protect them. Today, we're exploring exactly how healthcare professionals build an invisible shield around patients, leaning heavily on comprehensive, evidence-based guidelines from global heavyweights like the CDC and NICE.
To break down this dual threat defense, we'll hit these 5 areas: the invisible surgical threat, Spaulding's safety blueprint, sterilization and disinfection methods, preventing surgical site infections, and finally, global guidelines and agreement.
Starting with Section 1, the invisible surgical threat.
Take a look at this number, 46.5 million. That's the amount of surgical procedures performed every single year in the US alone. And remember, every single one of those requires a deliberate breach of the human body's natural host barriers. The skin, our primary defense, is literally opened up. Without a flawless system in place, every one of those 46.5 million procedures is basically an open door for pathogens.
So, the crucial point here is understanding the absolute difference between just cleaning something and actually making it safe for surgery. We've got to separate disinfection from true sterilization. While disinfection heavily reduces pathogens, and hey, it's great for a lot of surfaces, true sterilization is a much, much higher bar. It guarantees a complete sterility assurance level. We're talking about completely obliterating all microbial life, even those incredibly stubborn bacterial spores. It's not just about being clean, it's about absolute, calculated biological absence.
Moving on to Section 2, Spaulding's safety blueprint.
To manage all this, we actually still use a master blueprint devised over 30 years ago by Earl H. Spaulding. It's this beautifully organized framework that assesses threat levels, and it dictates exactly how medical equipment must be reprocessed based entirely on what that equipment is going to touch. It completely takes the guesswork out of the equation. You wouldn't treat a surgical scalpel the same way you treat a blood pressure cuff, right? Well, Spaulding's scheme gives us the exact rules for each.
At the very top of that list, we have critical items. These are tools that enter the bloodstream or normally sterile tissue. Think cardiac catheters, implants, surgical instruments. Because the infection risk here is frankly catastrophic, we absolutely have to achieve a sterility assurance level of 10 to the negative 6. To put that into perspective, that means there can only be a 1 in a million chance of a single surviving bacterial spore. It's an incredibly rigorous standard, as it should be.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we scale our response based on risk. We move down to semi-critical items, like gastrointestinal endoscopes. These touch mucous membranes but don't usually penetrate tissue, so they require high-level disinfection. Then you've got non-critical items, bed rails, over-the-bed tables, that only touch intact skin. Those just need low-level disinfection. We're perfectly matching the cleaning intensity to the item's inherent infection risk.
Section 3, Sterilization and Disinfection Methods.
So how do healthcare facilities actually pull off this incredible level of purity in the real world? Well, the operations manual for this is the CDC's Guideline for Disinfection and Sterilization. This document lays out the strict, evidence-based rules for deploying our physical and chemical weapons against pathogens. It literally tells central processing teams exactly what tools to use to hit that 1 in a million sterility level.
And honestly, the arsenal they use is fascinating. Good old-fashioned high-heat pressurized steam is still incredibly reliable and lethally effective. It's basically the workhorse for standard surgical instruments. But, as you know, modern medicine relies heavily on heat-sensitive plastics and delicate electronics. For those, we need innovative low-temperature tech. We're talking toxic gases like ethylene oxide or incredibly advanced stuff like hydrogen peroxide gas plasma, which sterilizes super fast at low temperatures.
But here's the real genius part. Having the technology just isn't enough. You have to prove it works every single day. Central processing teams are constantly monitoring these machines using biological indicators. They literally put incredibly tough live bacterial spores right into the sterilizer alongside the equipment. If the machine successfully kills off those hyper-resistant spores, the team knows for an absolute fact that the cycle is lethal enough to handle any pathogens on the surgical instruments.
Which brings us to Section 4, Preventing Surgical Site Infections.
All right, so we've secured the equipment, the tools are flawless. Now we pivot our dual-threat defense to the second battleground, protecting the patient's own biology to prevent surgical site infections, or SSIs. To do this, we look straight to the 2017 CDC guidelines published in JAMA Surgery, which totally updated the playbook for preventing SSIs. And this isn't based on a hunch. It draws from strict grade methodology evidence, meaning these recommendations are built on the most robust, high-quality clinical data out there.
This research creates an active timeline of defense for the patient, and it actually starts before they even set foot in the hospital. It kicks off with a simple full-body wash with soap or antiseptic the night before surgery. Then, the clinical team uses perfectly timed prophylaxis, delivering IV antibiotics at the exact right moment so the drug's tissue concentration is at its absolute peak the very second the surgeon makes the incision. And finally, in the OR, the skin is prepped with an alcohol-based agent.
But the defense definitely doesn't stop once the patient goes to sleep. During the surgery, the anesthesia and surgical teams are actively managing the patient's biology to empower their immune system. They're keeping a tight leash on blood sugar levels, targeting below 200 milligrams per deciliter, because high glucose really impairs the immune response. They actively warm the patient to maintain normothermia, or a normal body temperature. And for intubated patients, they give them an increased fraction of inspired oxygen. They are quite literally optimizing the body to fight off infection from the inside out while the operation is happening.
Section 5. Global Guidelines in Agreement. What makes these protocols so incredibly powerful is that this isn't just some isolated American initiative. When we zoom out and look at the data, a totally unified global consensus emerges. When organizations like the Healthcare Infection Society synthesized the CDC guidelines with the 2019 NICE updates out of the UK, plus the World Health Organization standards, we see a totally united front in operational safety. The world's top scientific bodies are independently reviewing the literature and landing on the exact same tactics.
Let me give you an example. Look at how both the CDC and the UK's NICE independently reviewed the evidence for skin preparation. They came to the exact same conclusion. Alcoholic chlorhexidine is the distinctly superior choice. NICE's meta-regression models actually showed, very convincingly, that it outperforms alternatives like povidone iodine. This kind of global cross-verification gives clinicians incredible confidence in the invisible shield they're building.
And we see this exact same crosstalk again with wound closure. The CDC, NICE, and the WHO all strongly advocate for considering antimicrobial triclosan-coated sutures. Think about it. When you're closing a surgical wound, using a suture that actively kills microbes adds a microscopic layer of security right at the site of maximum vulnerability, significantly slashing the chances of a surgical site infection.
Now, for particularly vulnerable patients, like folks undergoing major cardiac or orthopedic surgeries, global guidelines converge on aggressive screening. If a patient is found to be carrying dangerous Staphylococcus aureus bacteria naturally on their body, they go through strict decolonization protocols. Using nasal mupirocin, combined with a chlorhexidine body wash, the care team actively hunts down and eliminates the staph bacteria before the first incision is ever even made.
Ultimately, bringing together these two pillars of defense is really what makes modern surgery possible. On one side, we've got flawlessly sterilized tools, guaranteed by science to a 1 in a million margin of error. On the other side, perfectly optimized patient biology, timed antibiotics, temperature control, targeted decolonization. Together, they create this incredible, invisible shield that literally saves countless lives every single day. But, as we all know, the microscopic world never stops moving. With pathogens constantly mutating and antimicrobial resistance on the rise, this battlefield is always shifting. So the question we have to leave you with today is this. As these superbugs continue to evolve, how will global science adapt these incredible guidelines next to keep our invisible shield unbreakable? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.